as you can tell by the title of this video, I'm basically going to be sharing my story about losing my dad. Today is May 17th of 2018, which marks 2 months since my dad has passed away. My dad passed away on March 17th. It was the hardest thing that I could ever go through in my life. Like, it was very hard. It's very hard and very unexpected. You know, I just feel like maybe me sharing my story could possibly help those out there that may stumble across my video that have gone through the same thing. Maybe it could help them in some sort of way. But I just wanted to basically just share my story. I just feel like, in a sense, every time I do share my story, it helps me. Everybody grieves in a different way, and I feel like me talking about it and just talking about my dad and, you know, the good times that we share and stuff, it helps me in a way. And I just hope that maybe my video and my story will help others. So I mean, hopefully it will help others find some type of comfort. But I just remember it like yesterday. I remember I was at work and I was on the phone with a client. My phone rang and I didn't recognize the number. So in the midst of being on the call with a client, I Googled the number. When I Googled the number, I saw that it said Centera Norfolk General, which is, of course, the hospital. So immediately what came to my head was like, you know, who could be, you know, contacting me from the hospital? And I immediately thought of my dad or my mom. So I was still on the phone with a client and I was just like, you know, anxious to figure out like who was calling me. So as soon as I got off the phone with the client, I called the hospital and, you know, I gave them my mom and dad's name. They told me that they didn't have anyone by the name, you know, their names there. So I was like, okay, well, who called me, you know? So I was like, you know, whoever called me is gonna call me back. Like, they should call me back because they didn't answer, so I'm just gonna wait. So about 10 minutes later, my phone rings and it's the same number, so I immediately pick it up. And it's this lady. I could never forget her name. Her name was Sherry. And so she, you know, asks, you know, is this Rowena? And I said, yes, this is her. So she's like, I'm here with your dad. And I'm just like, okay, is my dad okay? And she just like, she ignored like my question and she just was like, hey, I've been trying to get in contact with your mom, you know, I've called her multiple times. And I was like, well, she's probably at work, so that's probably why she's not answering. So then I go back to my question, like I asked her, I was like, is my dad okay? And she just says, you know, we just think it's best for you and your mom and your family to come here. And I just immediately got stuck. Like, just like the worst thing just came to me. Like, normally when people say that, it's not good. And I went into panic mode. And so I just was like, okay, well, can I see my dad? Like, what room is he in? Like, and so she gave me all the information and I got off the phone and I started packing up my things and I told my boss, I was like, hey, I have to go. My dad's in the hospital. I don't know if he's okay. And at this point I'm crying. And she's like, okay, you know, just breathe. You know, do you need me to drive you there? I was like, no, I'm okay. He's downtown already because I work downtown or whatever. So I'm like, he's already downtown here. So I immediately haul ass out of there. And it's kind of a walk from where I park at and where my job is. So I'm hauling ass and it's pouring outside, raining. And I get in the car, you know, get out of the parking garage, and I'm heading towards the hospital. In the midst of heading there, I'm calling my mom. I'm calling her phone. She's not answering. She's not answering. And then she finally answers the phone. And so I'm crying, and she's just like, "What's wrong?" And I was like, the hospital called me and told me Daddy's in the hospital. Um, and I was like, they won't tell me anything. It's like, you know, they won't tell me anything. They said that we need to come to the hospital. And then she's like, no, don't tell me that. Please don't tell me that. And then it just gets quiet. And next thing you know, someone picks up her phone and they're like, you know, hey, what's going on? She just fell out. And, you know, I tell them, and they're like, okay, we're on our way. We're going to bring her there. So I'm like almost at the hospital. I get to the hospital and I, you know, run to the front desk and I'm like, how do I get to this room? Like, which way do I need to go? So the guy at the front desk gives me the directions, and I get to the floor that my dad is on, and I see his room number from down the hall, and my heart is racing. Like, it's just like literally racing, and I just feel like it's gonna come out my chest because I didn't know what to expect. I just expected the worst. So I slowly walk into the room, and I see my dad in bed. And I look at him, and he looks at me, and I just immediately start to cry because he didn't look himself. My dad was so small. I could see his cheekbones, and I'm just like, the last time I saw you, this is not what you look like. And I immediately, you know, came to his side, and I held his hand, and I just asked him, I said, you know, what's wrong? I just kept asking, what's wrong? Are you okay? What happened? And he told me to stop crying because my dad never liked for us to cry. He would hate for us to see, you know, to see us cry. And, you know, it was so hard for me. I tried, you know, to stop crying, and I just, you know, asked him again. I was just like, what's wrong, you know? And he was just basically like, I have some good news and bad news. And I was just like, okay, like, well, I was like, what's wrong? And he would just say, do you want to hear the good news or bad news first? And I just asked him, I was like, you know, I just said, Daddy, what's wrong? And he said that he had cancer. To hear those words broke my heart. And I just said, no, like, what do you mean you have cancer? Like, no, like, what are you talking about? Like, you just went to the doctor not too long ago, and, you know, like, how all of a sudden that you have cancer? Like, I just couldn't understand what he was telling me, and just, like, in so much disbelief, like, this can't be true. And, you know, he just told me, you know, that he's gonna be okay. And I was just like, okay. And, you know, he was just like, you know, he could get chemo to help try to shrink it or whatnot. And I was like, okay. And he just told me, you know, to stop crying and stuff, you know, and just wipe my tears. And then he was just like, you got braces? And I was just like, yeah. And he's like, how long have you had them on? I was like, I had them for a month now. I mean, mind you, my dad has been away for some time, for like 2 months. I haven't seen him in like 2 months. And he was just like, you know, how long do you have to have them? I was like, for 2 years. He was like, okay. He was like, when you get them done, he was like, you already had a nice smile. He was like, you're gonna have a really, really nice smile after, you know, you get them taken off. And it was just like, yeah. So we just sat there, watched TV and stuff, and we talked about things. Asked me, he's like, "Where's your mom at?" I was like, "She's on her way." So I'm sitting there holding his hand, watching TV with him. We're watching TV, and my mom calls my phone, and she's like, "What room number is it?" So I tell her, and then like 5 minutes later, she's walking in the door. Walked up to the left of me at the foot of his bed, and she looked at him, and she saw how he looked, and I could just see her eyes tearing up, and I started to cry. And she said, "What's wrong?" She was asking what's wrong. And the tears were just running down my face. And I looked at her, and then she was like, "What's wrong with him?" And I looked at my dad because I knew he wanted to tell her. I didn't want to be the one to tell her. So I looked at him like, tell her. And that's when he told her. And she broke down, and he was just like, "Stop crying." He's like, "Stop crying, chicken. It's okay. I'm going to be okay, chicken." That's what my dad called my mom. He called her chicken and whatnot. So, after all of that, we got past all of that. And, we were just sitting down watching TV with my dad. He was talking about stuff. He was joking, just being himself. And I then called my brothers and sisters and told them what was going on and stuff. And, they came and whatnot. And, my dad, he was just asking, how the kids are doing and stuff like that. And he was like, "Where's my little feet? Where's my youngest?" He called her Little Feet and Butterfinger. So he was like, "Where's she at? Bring me my baby." Like, my daughter was his everything. Like, that was his baby right there. You couldn't tell him nothing about her. He had her all the time. Like, she loved her papa. Like, the bond that they had was just amazing. Like, they had a really great bond. And just like me and my dad, we had an amazing bond. We were the closest. Losing him was very hard on me. I remember, like, my dad, like, he was, like, in the hospital. He was kind of down. And, like, the very next day, after the first day I found out he was in there, I brought Nana there. She walked through the room, and she ran to him and jumped on his bed. And my dad's face just lit up. He was smiling. He was so happy. His spirit was just lifted. Like, it just changed immediately. And she hugged him and held on to him, gave him a kiss and stuff. It was such an amazing feeling for me to actually see him smile like that and just, be in a better mood. So, days passed by being in the hospital. Everybody's coming there to visit my dad and stuff. Friends and families coming to visit him. And my dad ended up getting the chemo treatment, which I honestly did not want him to get. Like, I just heard so many, like, not too good stories about him, about chemo. How it will make you sick, and, like, almost as if, like, it will actually, take your life away from you faster. So my dad got the treatment, and he wasn't the same. He was sick. Like, he was sicker. Like, he didn't have energy. Like, he was always sleeping. He wasn't eating like that anymore. It just was not the same. Like, and I swear, like, after that chemo treatment, things just went downhill from there. It was just so hard to watch. Like, I just couldn't understand. Like, my dad was so much better before he got the chemo. He was talking, laughing, joking. After he got the chemo, he just was quiet. And I was just like, this, something's not right. Like, why, like, this whole 360, like, what happened? So I remember I was at home and my mom called me and she was crying, and immediately I thought, oh my gosh, my dad's gone. Like I just thought that immediately. And she was just like, I'm sorry, I signed the papers. And I'm just like, what papers did you sign? Like, what are you talking about? And she was like, I signed the DNR papers, which is do not resuscitate. If you don't know what that is, basically, if their heart would stop, then they would not perform anything to bring them back. They would just let them, pass on. And I was so mad at her. I was so angry and I was so pissed off. And I was just like, why would you do that? Like, you didn't even talk to me about it. Like, how could you do that? I was just so upset with her. And she was just like, like, me and your dad talked about this. He said that if the machines were going to be the only things that was going to keep him alive, then he said just to let him go. He didn't want to live like that. And so I was just like, like, okay. And I got dropped off at the hospital because I couldn't drive. And I got there and I just sat with my dad. I was there until 3 o'clock in the morning. And I went home. My older sister dropped me off at home. And my mom, she had called me. And she was just like, they had did a biopsy on my dad's liver. So they did a biopsy on my dad's liver and it came back. And they basically said, his liver is failing. There's nothing else we can do for him. So my mom said, we're going to have a meeting with the doctors and them at 2 o'clock. So it came close to the time my mom called me. She's like, hey, where you at? The meeting's at 2 o'clock. And then she was just like, hey, your dad wants these chips. It was like those pretzels with like the mustard on them and stuff. So I literally went to like 2 different stores and they did not have them. So I was just saying, I called her. I was like, hey, every store I went to, they don't have them. So, after the meeting, I can go grab them for him. So I get to the hospital and I go see my dad and whatnot. I ask him if he's okay and stuff. Tell him that I love him and stuff. And then we end up going into another room to talk to the hospital doctors and them. And they're asking me all these questions, and I'm just like, literally, like, really, like, I don't want to answer your questions. Like, why are you asking me these questions? Like, my dad is passing, like, he's dying. Like, why are you asking me all these questions? So, they, at the end of them discussing everything, they basically told me my dad's liver's failing and that there's nothing else they can do for him. The cancer has spread. And there's nothing they can do. And so at the end of all of that, they asked, do we have any questions? And I asked them, I said, how long does my dad have? And the doctor goes, we don't know. He can go any day now. It's not up to us, And I was just like, okay, And it's like, I don't, I don't want my dad to die here in the hospital. Like, no, that's not what I want. I want to take my dad home tomorrow. Like, I want to take him home. He's not going to die here in the hospital. I refuse to allow that to happen. And they were like, hey, we can contact a hospice nurse to get that all, take care of for you so you can take your dad home. And I'm just like, okay. So after that, I get up and go in the room with my dad, and I just, hold his hand. Asked him and was like, hey, daddy, I was like, are you ready to go home? He was like, no. He said, I'm too weak, I'm not ready. And he said, maybe tomorrow. And I said, okay, we're gonna go home tomorrow. I'm gonna take you home tomorrow. And then he just like shook his head, and he just started looking at the TV again. So all in all, after that, I left. I was there for a couple hours and started to get a little late. And I was like, I have to, get my house ready for him to come home to. So I left, went to the store, grabbed some things, cleaned up, moved things around. And the next morning, the hospice people came. They set up the room, set up the bed, brought in like an oxygen machine, just brought in things that we would need for my dad. So they brought my dad home, and stuff, and his mood and spirit just seemed a lot better. He was a lot more comfortable, And that was my biggest thing. I wanted to make my dad comfortable, and I wanted him to be surrounded by so much love. I wanted him to hear the kids, playing and laughing. I wanted him to have those memories. I didn't want him to, be in a hospital and remember the hospital. Like, I didn't want that. I wanted him to remember all of the love and support that he had. That was what was important to me. Through the days, we would watch him, make sure he was comfortable, try to get him to eat and stuff. My dad really wasn't eating as much, and I mean, like, I read about, the stages of death, and he was showing signs of it, and like, I just was just like, no, like, oh my gosh, like one morning, it's like 4 o'clock in the morning, I had fell asleep in my room, and the room that my dad was in is directly across from mine, which was my kids' room. The door was open, and the crack, I can see my dad. So I got up and I went in the room. My sister was in there with him. He asked, he was like, where Malfi moved to? And I was like, what? I looked at my sister, she looked at me, and my sister was like, I am mouthy. And right then I was just like, no, like just wait. Like, I'm just sitting here like, wait, like, because that was a sign of them getting ready to go, like them kind of forgetting. And after that, my sister, she just like, then he came back and he was just like, where'd you move to? And she told him, and then he just like folded his hands together like this, and he started watching TV again. And she got up and she left out the room, and she ended up falling asleep. And I came in there and I sat with him, and he was just like talking to me and stuff. And he asked me to call his sister, and I tried so hard to stay strong and not cry, and I didn't cry. But I'm just like, I told my dad, okay, I'll call her later. My dad's sister actually passed away like 2 weeks like 2-3 weeks ago, prior to that day. And that's how I knew he was getting closer and closer to death, because they say that they start to talk about people that have passed away, and it just really started to hit me. He would just talk about random things out of nowhere, ask me about certain things, and I just would go along with it, even though they didn't make sense, because I knew what was going on that morning. My dad had developed like a fever, and we had gave him the medicine and stuff, tried to help bring it down. And so my mom ended up calling when the nurses came out. And she was just like, he's about to go soon. It's just like, you need to, call everybody and let them know. And I walked out the room, and I walked into my room, and I just broke down crying, because I was just like, no, like, this can't be real. Like, this can't be true. Like, why? I just wanted to know, like, why? Like, why? Like, why does he have to go? Why does he have to go so soon? My dad was my heart. He meant so much to me. I did so much for him. And I just could not believe that he would be taken away from me like that. And so after that, the nurse came in, and she was holding me, hugging me. She was just like, you have to be here for your dad, don't let him go alone. Show him as much love as you can. And so after that, I called my brothers and sisters, and I told them, that daddy doesn't have much time, and he's at that point. And so my older brothers, they don't live here, so they had to get on the road and drive here. We sat with my dad. He was just basically like in and out of it. Like, he was always just like, he was just sleeping. Like, he'll wake up, and he'll wake up and look at you, and like wink his eye at you, and just like close his eyes again. Like, he didn't have much energy at all. And then I remember like, I was outside the room, and outside with the kids and stuff, and sitting around, because I wanted to let like my older brother and them be there with him, kind of like give them time alone with him. Like 12 o'clock, my oldest brother drove from Florida. He still had not made it here, and so we would check his blood pressure every 30 minutes or stuff, and we were concerned about it. So my mom ended up calling the nurse. This older guy came, and he checked my dad's vitals and stuff, and he basically was telling us like, he was like, he's getting closer, and he was like, he wouldn't be surprised if we called him by noon the next day or whatnot. And so after he left and stuff, we kept watching him, checking his blood pressure and stuff. And It was like, I'm gonna say like 2 o'clock in the morning. I told my mom to check his blood pressure. So she was checking it, and the machine just read error. And I was like, try it again, like tighten it up, do it again. She did again, and it just read error. And I looked at my mom, and tears just started coming down my face. I looked at my sister, and I was like, try his leg. So she put it on his leg, and it did the same exact thing. And I was just like, no, mm-mm. And so I got up because my oldest sister was asleep, and I went and woke her up, and I was like, come in the room, daddy's about, like, he's about to go. So it was me, my mom, my 2 older sisters, and my older brother. My oldest brother still wasn't here yet. He was driving from Florida, and we were all in the room with him, And my dad's breathing just started to, it just was so, it was different. He would pause. He started to pause in between his breathing, and at that point I just knew like it wouldn't be much longer. And he was fighting to breathe, basically. And then like his chest would like go down, and it would just take forever to come back up. And he fought. My dad fought for so long. My dad fought for like 30 minutes straight. And my mom was just like, she was just like, I know you're fighting, but just let go. She was just like, Ryan's on his way here. And she was like, baby, just let go. Like, he'll be here. Just let go. And after my mom said that, my dad took his last breath. And when he took his last breath, because his eyes were like closed, he opened his eyes as if he was looking at us for the last time. And that was it. He took his last breath and opened his eyes, looking at us. And this stuff came out of his mouth and his nose. It was the hardest thing to ever see and to ever witness. I screamed so loud. I just couldn't believe that my dad was gone. I could not believe it. It was so hard. I was in there crying with him, rubbing his head and everything, and I just felt like I had to get some air, just move or whatever. So I got up and I started walking towards my room, and I don't know what happened to me, but I passed out. And hit the floor, and I just remember, it was just so blurry because my eyes were just filled with so many tears, and I was just crying, and my teeth were chattering. They were chattering so fast, like when those little toys that you wind up, like some of my teeth were, and I was just like, I couldn't breathe. I just could not breathe. And my brother, I remember I could hear my brother, and I could feel him, like he was holding me, trying to tell me to breathe and try to calm down and breathe and stuff. And they had to get my pump and stuff. They ended up calling an ambulance and stuff because of that for me. And I sat there and I just tried to, slow my breathing down, tried to calm myself down because I wanted to be back in the room with my dad. Like, I wanted to be with him. The paramedics got there and stuff, and they stood in front of me and they watched me. At that point, I had, like, gained control of my breathing, and I asked the paramedic, I said, can you please help me up? I want to be with my dad. So he helped me up and he walked me into the room with my dad again, and I stood right above him. And I just rubbed his head. I just kept rubbing his head, and I was just crying. I remember my aunt had got there, and she's standing next to me, and I just told her, I was like, I was like, Tita, please wake him up, like, wake him up. I kept asking her over and over again, and she just held on to me. It was so hard. So hard. I just was in so much disbelief. Like, I just could not believe that my dad was gone. Like, I just didn't want to believe it. I couldn't accept it. I could not accept it. And I just remembered, like, parts of his body just started to get cold, and I grabbed a blanket and I put it over him. I just told him, like, put the blanket on him, he's getting cold. And sat in there for a while. For a very long time. And I just got to a point where I was just so tired and exhausted. Like, something came over me. And so it just felt like it just sucked all of my energy out of me. So I went into my room and I passed out. And I just remember being woken up by my mother's cries. And I woke up. And I could see that the room that my dad was in was shut. I could hear people in there. So I stood up and I started to walk out my bedroom door. And I was met with this odor. Now, it was the same exact smell and odor that when my dad did vomit and stuff, it was that smell. And I kind of was just like, shake it off a little. And the people at the door had opened, and they were carrying my dad in a white sheet. And I was just, I didn't even cry. I just sat there and I looked and I watched him carry my dad out of my house. And, after that, I went back in my room and I fell back asleep. Next day, my mom, she had woke me up. She was like, I'm gonna go, handle some things. I'll be back. And I was just like, okay. But I had no energy. Like, every single day that passed, I was just exhausted. Like, I had no energy to do anything. It's like I wasn't, like, tired. Like, but, like, something was just coming over me and just, like, sucking the energy out of me. And I was just like, what's going on here? Like, I don't want to go to sleep. I want to be up. So my mom had came back and stuff, and she was telling me, like, hey, we have a meeting with the funeral home. We got to be there at 12 o'clock and stuff like that, to start making my dad's arrangements. And I was just like, okay. So that next day, my mom had left out um, to go get my grandma, and I was in the house by myself. Um, and I was in the bathroom brushing my teeth, and the door was shut. And when I was brushing my teeth, that same odor, I could smell it, and it was literally in front of me, and it was so strong. I was just like, oh my God. So I end up opening the door to, like, you know, try to air it out. And I was using my floss pick, and I went down to spit in the sink, and as soon as I came up, I saw my dad walk right past me, and it scared it. I wouldn't say that it scared me, but I wasn't expecting that, and it made me jump really hard. And when I turned to look, because the direction he went into was where my room was, and when I turned to look, he wasn't there. And as soon as it happened, my mom was coming through the front door, and she looked at me, and she was just looking like, you know, what's wrong? Like, why you looking like that? So I told her, and then she was like, you know what? I've been smelling that same scent too. So I'm just like, okay, like that's, like, he's still here with us. Like, it was, in a sense, it was comforting to me to know that he was that close. Um, but it made me cry. Like, it was just so sad, because like, to like see him walk past me, and then to turn to look for him, and he wasn't there. Like, that hurt so bad. We ended up going to the funeral home, doing the arrangements and everything. Um, and then we had to go to the store to go get my dad a suit. It was so hard, because I'm just like, I'm in here, you know, shopping for a suit and stuff for my dad for his funeral. Like, it was just so unreal to me. So we did all of that stuff, and then the next day, my mom actually ended up staying at my grandma's house. I guess she just couldn't, you know, stay in my house. She stayed at my grandma's house, and I had to go pick her up because we had to go back to the funeral home. And it was me and my son and my daughter. My son sat in the front seat with me, and my baby girl sat in the back seat right behind my son. And so I'm driving, and at this point my brother ends up in front of me, so I'm driving behind him, and Nana goes, no, she goes, mommy, mommy. And I was like, I turned the music down, and I was like, what, baby? And she was like, Papa here. And she was like, Papa right there. And she was leaning over her car seat, and she was going like this, Papa right here, Papa right here. And she's like, turn around. And that right there immediately just caused me to break down, and I was just crying so bad. Like, she can see him, like, and it was crazy because before she said something to me, I could smell that odor again, and she said what she said, and I was just like, oh my gosh, like, this is crazy. Like, and that right there, just like, I was just like, I can't believe this. Like, I still can't believe this. So after that and stuff, we ended up going back to my house, and family and friends came over or whatnot. I was sitting on the couch, and my uncle was sitting on the couch next to me, and his girlfriend was sitting there. My mom was sitting on the floor right next to the couch, and my daughter was right there next to me, Nana. But she was so sad. She was so sad. She wasn't talking to anybody. She wasn't interacting with anybody. She was just so sad, and that was not like her. It was like she's 3 years old. She didn't really understand, but it's like she knew a part of her, like she was missing something, and it was my dad. So I started to smell that smell again, and I didn't say anything. And my mom was like, no, I'm not gonna say anything. She's like, no, I'm not gonna say anything. And I looked at her, and I said, you smell it too? And she started crying. And I started to cry, because that meant he was right there with us. She thought she was the one who was smelling it, but I smelled it too. I just didn't want to say anything. And then, like, the days were going by. This my dad's wake wasn't until Friday, which was like literally almost like 5 days. And the anticipation was just there. Like, I wanted to see my dad. I wanted to be with him again. Those days were dragging, and they seemed like forever. And it was so hard on me, because I had to put my dad's programs together. I would literally be up to like 4 o'clock in the morning trying to put it together. I would have to constantly stop, because I would start to cry, and I would just end up falling asleep, and then I'll wake up and start doing it again. I'll cry, fall asleep, and it just got closer and closer to that day that I would see my dad again. And my heart was just so heavy. It was so heavy. That day finally came where I was to see him again, and it was so hard. It was so hard. I walked in the room where he was, and I walked right back out. I couldn't do it. I just couldn't do it. I just did not want to believe that my dad was gone, and I would never be able to see him again. So I sat in my car, and I listened to Kehlani's song called Thank You. I just sit there and listen to it over and over again, and I looked at my dad's pictures in my phone, and I watched the video that I had took of him in the hospital over and over again, because I just wanted to hear his voice. I just wanted to hear his voice. I wanted to see him moving. And I sat in there for a while, and you know, everybody's coming to check on me and stuff. And then I finally, you know, got out, and I went back in, and I just went in there to see him, and I just cried. Like, I cried. It was very hard. And they end up moving my dad into another room where friends and family could view him. Then he sat at the very front, right in front of him. And I just sat there quietly. And everybody, you know, was, you know, shaking my hand or giving me a hug and saying, giving their condolences and everything. And time where the viewing was about to be over, and I wasn't ready to leave. I wasn't ready at all to leave him. And so, you know, after all that, the next day was his funeral. It was very hard. Again, sat in the front, like the same spot. and I had wrote a poem for my dad that I didn't put in the program because I didn't know if I was going to be able to read that poem. But my older sister's like, I'll go up there with you. I'll be right there with you, read the poem. And so the pastor was looking at me and he was like, are you ready? And I was just like, I was like, yeah. So I got up, went up there, I started to read the poem and I started to choke up there and I had to stop for a second. I started crying and then I just, I pushed through it. I pushed through it. It was very hard. But I wanted to read the poem because I wanted my dad to hear the words that I had to say. It was, man, that was the hardest thing ever to have to do, service and stuff. I had one last viewing before we take my dad to the gravesite. We walked out first, and my mom stopped right there, and she just broke down. And I had to hold her because she was about to collapse. So then my brother and them helped her, and I got right there next to my dad, and I broke down so bad. I didn't want to leave. I didn't want to not see his face anymore. And I just gave my dad a kiss on the forehead. And my cousin had, she grabbed me and she walked me out, I didn't want to leave my dad at all. I did not want to leave him. And so we had got to the site, and I had flowers for everyone to, have to put on his casket. So everybody came up and put the flower on his casket. And I just broke down again. And my friend was right there, and she was like, rubbing my back and stuff. It was just so hard. I'm still in disbelief at this point. I can't believe this. I just don't understand, why my dad, why did he have to go? I just could not wrap my finger around it. And then we left from there, went to my grandma's house and stuff and ate and stuff. Really wanted just to go home and just be by myself. But I mean, it honestly is very hard. It's still hard for me. My dad was my heart. He was everything. I did everything for my dad. I miss him so much, so much. And it's just Father's Day is next month. And I don't have my dad here to celebrate with him, to take him out to his favorite restaurants like I always did. So it's gonna be very hard for me not knowing, it's just every day it's just so hard because I literally talk to my dad every single day. He texts me, he tells me that he loved me and stuff, and not to get that phone call from him anymore, that text message, it's hard. I just want to hear his voice again. I want to be able to just talk to him like I always do when I got from work and just tell him about my day. I can't do that anymore. And it sucks. It sucks so bad. So I tried to go see him as much as I can. He's literally buried like 5 minutes up the street from my house. I normally go on Sundays just to help get my day started, get my week started. Just sit down there and talk to him, tell him about my day. It helps me. It helps me a lot. I just really, really miss him so much, and I love him more and more every single day. I just wish he was still here with me. I mean, I've learned a lot. Like, my dad is the reason why I started my YouTube channel. You know, life's too short not to do things that you've really wanted to do, and I took that and ran with it. So, you know, I'm going to do everything that I said I wanted to do, and I'm going to make sure that I do them and accomplish them, because I know that's what my dad would want me to do. Like, and I know he wouldn't want me crying and stuff, but I mean, it's hard. It's so hard. Like, it's just hard. Like, it's the man that gave me life. It's the man that taught me so many things. How can I not cry? But, you know, it gets better with time, as everyone says. And I know that I can't just sit there and barricade myself in my room. I have to keep living. I have to keep living for myself, for my kids, for my family, for my mother. I have to be strong, and I have to keep going. I would say that for anyone that's going through what I'm going through, you have to live a better life. You have to do things that you wouldn't normally do. You have to live life as if it was the last day of your life. Like, you have to do these things. You have to smile. You have to laugh. You have to be happy, you know, as much as you can. And you have to love. You have to love. You have to love others, because love is truly the only thing that we have here on this earth. Like, love is everything. Like, love to me grows. When you love something so much, you become a better person. And I just feel like trying to do better things and live life to the fullest is it helps. It helps. It's all still fresh to me. I mean, it's only been 2 months. I still kind of, in a way, just feel like my dad is just away. And I know deep down, like, he's gone. Like, and I mean, I just have to say, like, if, you know, you still have your dad, or even if anyone that you love that has passed away, like, it gets better with time. And no matter what, they will always be there with you. It's hard, but you will get through it, you know. You're not alone. Like, I felt like I was so alone after losing my dad, but I wasn't. There's other people out here that have lost their dad or their mother or their, anybody. And I just wanted to, basically just share my story because I feel like in a way it would help others. I know it helps me when I do share my story and tell other people about it. Even though I break down and cry, but I feel like crying is good. It's good to cry. It's okay to cry. It's okay to express how you feel. It's somewhat like therapy to the heart. You can't always keep everything built up inside because you will just explode. Like, you will just end up being in a dark place if you do. So I feel like it's best that you talk about it. Well, I definitely do want to say that I appreciate everybody that has been supportive with this. I really appreciate it, and I love you guys. Like, to see others recognize how strong you've been throughout this whole process it's really amazing. Like, so many people were like, you're so strong, and I just appreciate that. Like, I have to be strong. I definitely have to be strong for my family and my mother and my kids, and for myself, especially for my dad, because that's what he would want. He wouldn't want us sitting around crying and stuff. He would want us to continue to live life and to continue to do better. I miss him so much, and I will never forget my dad. It's not a day that goes by that I don't think about him, that I don't miss him. I think about him all the time. I daydream about him. Like, he's always on my mind. All the time. It just really sucks that he's no longer here. But I know that he, is no longer suffering or in any type of pain. And that when he did leave, he left surrounded by so much love. And that means a lot. That really means a lot. Definitely hope that my video in a way may have helped anyone out there that comes across my video. Losing someone that you love so much is very hard, but you will get through it. You will get through it. It gets better. It does. Everyone kept telling me that, it's going to get better, and it does get better. I'm still grieving over my dad. Like, it will take me some time. It definitely will. It definitely will. But, we just have to make the best out of life. Like, you can't stop living. This, like, you have to keep going. Like, you have to. It's the only way to get through it. Well, I definitely hope that you guys find comfort. I hope that my video did help again, and be the best person that you can be moving forward. Live life to the fullest. Don't take anyone for granted, and be yourself. Be happy. Smile. Love. Because it does get better, and you're strong. You're strong. Even if you feel like you're not strong, you are strong. And you are brilliant. Just, tell if you still have your dad, or your mom or anyone that you're really close to, just tell them that you love them. Because you never know. You never know what can happen. You never know. Just always tell your loved ones that you love them. And even tell them how much they mean to you. Even if you call them and tell them, or if you text them, just do it. Just do it. Life's too short. Anything can happen. Be the best person that you can be. I definitely want to thank you guys for listening to my story. And make sure that you do subscribe and hit your notification button, so when I do post another video that you will be alerted of my new video. Again, thank you so much.